Thank you all for coming. We'll call the meeting to order. Accept the motion to approve the agenda. All those in favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
The minutes for...
We have a quorum.
Huh?
We have a quorum.
We have a
Yeah.
quorum, right. The minutes, does anyone have any questions about any of the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Anybody?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public comment? Does anyone have anything for us other than what's on the agenda? Hearing none, we move on to Mike in the presentation. And Gabe is on the phone, everyone, so we all know. He's there.
He's always
he's having
there.
Dinner. He's cooking dinner.
He's
on the
always
phone.
there.
Thank you. So Mike, it's yours.
Mr. Chairman, the first item on the agenda is the police department presentation for crime prevention through environmental design. So I'll yield to Chief Pittman for his presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Board, good evening. What we'd ask the opportunity to do is come before the planning board and explain to you about a new service that we would like to get going here on Nantucket to help the process of these major commercial developments especially, but even to some extent some of the residential subdivision issues. To give some input into the design of locations that would improve the policeability of those facilities at those locations. This is a program that we had started years ago back in the city I was at before. And what happens here on Nantucket is we get called in for these meetings, these major commercial developments especially, where everybody wants input. Well, to be honest with you, I'm not necessarily the person that should be given input on all these things like street lists and sidewalks and lights and this stuff and that. I mean, you know, it takes more than just the average training that a police officer has to get real good ideas there. I mean, basically, we were asked to give input on our personal experiences and personal preferences. So looking around at how we could better professionalize those services, we enrolled one of our officers in a program called Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design, which is a program taught at the Southern Police Institute in Louisville, Kentucky. And it has this program has been very successful in helping designers in the early stages of project proposals identify potential pitfalls for enforcement issues, public safety issues, things like that. And what I've asked is Sergeant Kevin Marshall, who's our SEPTED trained officer, to put together a little presentation so you can understand better what the purpose of SEPTED is, and to offer this service to anybody that comes to you with an idea. And so it's free, and we just suggest or ask that they give us a little time to maybe sit down with them with their concept, and maybe we can help them not complicate some of the complicated problems we have out there, not further complicate some of the problems we have out there when a project's built and nobody really considers the inputs and how that inputs public safety and policing and safety within those facilities. Because, you know, what looks good on paper sometimes might have some very real consequences for public safety. Good examples of Richmond properties. They did meet with us and we did give them information up front that did result in some changes to what they're proposing. But had we been able to do that at an earlier stage, it might have saved them some money and time, and it might have made a better public safety impact on that project. So I turn it over to Sergeant Kevin Marshall, and I appreciate the board's time and letting us do this presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. My name is Kevin Marshall. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this. The island is changing, and the police department realizes that. And what we want to do, what the chief is passionate about, is he wants to make sure that we are able to maintain security and safety for the businesses and for the citizens that come and visit. In order to do that, we need to take a look at the future, which is a widely accepted definition is the anticipation, recognition, and appraisal of a crime risk and the initiation of some action to remove it or reduce it. What does that mean? Basically, we'll want to focus on crime prevention. Simply stated, SEPTED uses design, management, and activity strategies to reduce opportunities for crimes to occur, to reduce fear, and to improve overall quality of life. We've all walked around the island, driven around the island, and say, wow, I don't want to walk down this dark alley. Well, why was it a dark alley? Did we forget to perhaps install some lighting? Or were the shrubs too high? Or was the design of the building not really focused on the security aspects itself? I'm not looking to assist this board or any other board and to try and say that I know more than you, because clearly you have a lot more knowledge on this. My focus is simply going to be to security and protection. So one of the things the concepts of SEPTED emphasize is the relationship of the physical environment, productive use of space, and the behavior of people. There could have been a couple of examples that I gave you. I always use the Cow Pond Lane example, where it happened to be a natural cut through, but as you can see, more and more people have used it. We've had crime down there, we've had incidents that have happened. If we are able to, as a board, as a community, look at the people are still going to use it, how can we make it safer for these people to use it? Saving on costs, saving on crime, it's a win-win for everyone. So the concepts, it's legitimate users, those persons using or attempting to use the space for its intended purpose. The potential offenders, those who would misuse the space and whose behavior would be unacceptable, and the observers, those who are available to observe and respond. Basically, we want to look at whatever structure or area is being designed and say, is it going to be utilized for what its purpose was made for? The example could be Cow Pond. We have a brand new school, we have a brand new hospital. There are a lot of different opportunities that we could work together and to try and limit crime before it actually happens. I happen to choose the Children's Park. Working night shift, I have responded to several different incidences. It could be drugs, it could be as simple as kids climbing up on the roof. My profession is changing like many other professions. We all look at teachers and say, okay, they're not only teaching, they are now having to protect their students. Who would have thought that at this era, teachers would have to worry about intruders coming into the building? Well, the same policy kind of correlates with the police department. We are no longer out there as peacocks. We have to look to the future to see how we can help our community better than what we're already doing. So if we allow opportunity, ability, and desire, you're going to get crime. So it's our job to make sure that we look at a plan, or if the plan is already in place, how can we better upgrade to prevent crime? So these are the 6 different challenges and principles. Natural surveillance, access management, territoriality, physical maintenance, water maintenance, and activity support. And in your packet, you'll see all of these broken down, but we're limited on time, so I will talk fast and go through just briefly. The natural surveillance, the design and placement of physical features in such a way as to maximize visibility. What does this mean? Well, it means where are the windows positioned, the walkways, assembly areas, corridors, stairways. And each one is broken down into 3 ways. So natural strategies, organized strategies, and mechanical strategies. So we're talking about natural surveillance. Here are the 3 categories. Here are the examples that we're talking about. So Children's Beach, we have the shack, we have windows. What's the one thing that we're always responding to? People jumping up on the roof. Well, I'm not sure if it was thought about. Maybe not, maybe it is. But as far as a law enforcement challenge, this is what we're responding to, and it's taking away vital resources. That's just one. Positioning of the windows as far as access. Now, there's good points to these windows where the person who's working in that shack can see out, and the person can see in if there's ever any challenges. I wanted to show you night and day, because a lot of times when we're designing or developing different areas or structures, we're thinking about what it's going to look like in the day. I'm responding to these situations at night. And so if you've been to Children's Park lately, it's very dark. And what that requires is lighting. What kind of lighting? Is it going to annoy the neighbors if it's too bright? Will it draw attention to the area? These are all different questions that I just want to bring forward to the board at the time of the design to try and eliminate any problems in the future. This is a picture that I took from one of the houses. Now, most of the times when we get a call out there, it's because a neighbor sees it. So the fact that the shrubs are separated, there's clear visibility into that park during the day, but at night you're limited on what you can see. I walked around there and there were 3 different light poles, all not working, all not functioning. Behind the shack, as far as natural surveillance, I'm not sure if it was the town, most likely the yacht club that has a green
Screen.
screen on the fence. Well, that limits what's happening not only in the yacht club parking lot, but in the children's speed parking lot. So that screen there may have been put up for a purpose, but it's actually hurting both properties. And these are just
Yep.
little things that we can do. They don't cost anything, and it would benefit both.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to stand here and say that if by implementing the SEPTED into your discussions, you are going to minimize crime 100%, but we know that's not realistic. So we need to come up with the best ways of viewing how we can protect the citizens of the island, the property owners, and anyone who's going to utilize the property as best we can. So access management, the physical guidance of people coming and going. It could be as simple as signage, entrances. Tell the people where they're supposed to be going. Guide them to the areas that you want. Chances are that's the path they're going to take instead of maybe perhaps wandering around and going down a different area and discovering something that they wouldn't normally have discovered by implementing the fencing or the entrances. Organized strategies, placing receptionists at a key entry point. Obviously that's costly. And mechanical strategies, auto-closing devices. We don't want to have to put automatic gates up or something to that effect, or you may on certain properties. Again, the program is simply designed to minimize crime. Here are a few more examples. So we have multiple calls for people going on the roof. We just had a call the other night where kids were climbing on the roof. The place was still open. And so that's kind of risky. I don't know. I used to climb roofs as well, but never when the place was open. But it's a clear example as there's a ramp right there and a guardrail, and it's as simple as climbing up on the railing and jumping up on the roof. Okay, here we go. We have fencing all around the property, which is very clear. If you're on a bike or whatever, your intention is to walk on the path, which allows for families and little children to play in the middle. Again, on the left is the view from the neighbor's house, who can clearly see through the shrubs into where the shack is. But again, at night, that visibility is broken. So one of the good things about the park is that the shack is facing beautiful ocean view and the playground, but you're missing the whole other left side of where the majority of people are going to be hanging out. Again, these are not prisons. These are merely law enforcement's views of how we could better based upon the past incidents that we've responded to. Multiple calls of kids drinking and hanging out in that specific park. Could it have been alleviated if the design had been a little bit better based upon a law enforcement's perception? Territoriality, the delineation of private, semi-private, and public spaces. The use of physical attributes that express pride and ownership. Who owns this property? If I go on this property and it looks like a $5 million property, maybe I won't vandalize it. If I go to the skate park and we're not maintaining it, maybe you'll have more vandals there. So let's take pride. Let's post who owns it, what are the times. Anything that will express ownership is a concept through SEPTED. Physical maintenance, the repair, replacement, and general upkeep. As you know, it's the little crimes that add up to the bigger crimes. So if we're not maintaining properties, and not we, but anyone in general, if we allow tagging on one instance and we don't fix it right away, do you think somebody else is going to feel the need to continue tagging? So we need to make sure that properties are all maintained. The selection of dwarf or low maintenance plant material. guide the people to the area that we want them to hang out. It's another thing to make sure that the landscaping is done in a way that eliminates crime. The building is designed and structured, and the windows are just the right height. But what other deterrent could we have? If I know that I'm going to receive a $300 fine, and it's clearly printed there, is that going to be a deterrent? So children's speech is clearly posted. This is a children's speech, it's owned by Park and Rec, these are the rules and regulations. Violators will be subject to fines. The skate park is clearly marked as well. Use of graffiti-resistant materials and frequent tagging. Clearly define how vehicular and pedestrian routes are to be used. Locating formal gathering areas. Again, I've been basically talking about the natural strategies, but each one of the 6 will have 3 different concepts within. Activity support, the planning and placement of activities to enhance casual natural surveillance. What does this mean? We'll use the Delta fields as an example. If we don't utilize those fields, what's going to happen? People will think, okay, it's never going to be patrolled, people aren't going to come out here, I have this whole field to myself to do what I want. If we plan different events, if the library plans a book signing outside in their yard, or the Rosencrantz has their fundraisers where it changes what they are normally doing, activities that could deter crime from happening. So you want to have different programs taking place. I know the schools regularly in the summertime will have different events in their own parking lot. Granted, they want to have these activities, but what they might not be thinking about is that alleviating crime? Well, it is, because you're not going to break into a building if you have people there. So for the children's speech, the playground itself, you have people there. There is a clear view of the playground up on the grass. So it is in fact a natural deterrent. People who are on the playground might be continuously looking over and saying, hey, what's going on up there? The natural surveillance of the neighbor looking in with the kids on the roof. That's how we got called in, because the visibility was clear in the evening hours. Again, my focus was at night. The bottom line is the desire, the ability, and the opportunity will equal the crime. So what CEPTED is trying to do is alleviate the crime. Victim precipitation, criminal precipitation, and situational precipitation. The sources of opportunity
things have come up over the years with bike paths. I mean, you have to remember that we didn't really have too many bike paths till 15 years ago, 10, 15. And stuff has come up about it occasionally, about trees behind, blocking them and things like that. And it's good to have this out in the open as a general conversation instead of it being somebody bringing it up. And you know what I mean? The reaction to one person saying it is not the same as something like this.
And the same concept
very
would apply
positive.
inside the structure as well. On a lot of the security assessments I have, the public space, people are saying, well, I don't want to close up the shop at night and walk around this turn because it's an empty hallway and there's 2 bathrooms in it, so what do I do? Is there going to be someone that's hanging out in the closet in the basement while I'm doing the security or while I'm closing up? So.
Yeah.
These are also applicable inside the structure as well. And there's different ways that you can utilize these concepts while maintaining safety. And they range from what kind of blinds do you have, what kind of lighting, what kind of security, cameras. There's different ways that we can do that inside and out.
Go ahead, Linda.
I think we sort of take it for granted here that we're all safe and things like that aren't going to happen on Nantucket, but as we've all seen lately, things are happening on Nantucket. I think it's a great concept. I don't know if you guys, I think the police department, Andrew, is invited to the coordinator reviews, which are the big projects that tend to have the screening, that tend to have a lot of structures in subdivisions or big commercial projects. That's a place to bring it up because they haven't really gone down the final presentation to the planning board yet. So I think it'd be very important for you to be heavily involved in the coordinator reviews that we have between the planning board, the ZBA, Concom, other entities. Have you made the presentation before the HDC? Most of the planning board is here. So we're getting it from the planning board perspective, from just a layout perspective, and Concom and any of the other regulatory boards that would have to deal with this, because there's some zoning requirements that are going to impact this. If you have more than 5 parking spaces, you have to have screening from the public way. Now, it's precisely the screening from the public way that blocks your visibility. But it's something we require as a planning board and a zoning board, is to screen those parking areas, which are really where people can congregate and things can happen. So there's some realities of permitting that we sort of have to try to figure out how to work this into what we require from a zoning perspective. Well aware of the Children's Beach problem. Some of my kids have been on that roof. Are you mostly looking from our perspective, the planning board, Concom, ZBA perspective, on subdivisions and developments and commercial structures, or from an HCC perspective, a single house having to consider their screening? Because if you've seen, particularly like places like Brant Point, it is the land of the 10-foot solid hedge, and the hedges are walling off every single piece of property on Nantucket from the street and from each other. To me, that's problematic. I can't stand these hedges. It just, I feel like I'm someplace else. When I was a kid, there were no hedges.
The setback concept isn't to deter anyone from beautifying the property how they see.
Right.
It's just to bring to their attention that by doing so, you are also causing this that may happen. And it's a risk, no matter what company you're in. For a commercial business, we would educate the business not to block their windows, not to put signs saying what kind of sales they're having, making sure the register is closer to the window so that cars that are driving by can see that the cashier is fine, can see that the register is still intact. So it just varies on what organization we're talking about, what company we're talking about. My goal would be to attend any meeting that I would be asked to attend and to get the input from the law enforcement side to try and deter any future crime. And by doing so, I obviously want to offer.
Well, the other thing is I think we're underlit here. I think lighting is a real problem. Children's Beach is pitch black. However, you end up with a situation where we have the dark skies. how do we light something without it looking like the football field at night? With keeping in mind the dark skies, the fact that everybody loves to look out, they don't like lights in their face like we have in the suburban areas where I grew up.
There's a wattage rule.
Yeah, and there's a wattage rule. So I'm just, there may be ways of using low light, ground light, that down lights and whatnot to improve visibility.
Or lights that face down.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the skate park was a big problem. Probably still is a problem over there. So there's some logistical things that are particular to Nantucket that we'd have to try to work around, especially from a planning perspective when we're looking at these large subdivisions or commercial projects. But I'm glad you met with Richmond, because that's a massive amount of residential units in one place. But I appreciate what you're doing. We just have to figure out how to do it without causing an unintended consequence from a design perspective. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything? Just a couple of questions. When you bring up Children's Beach, it's interesting you bring that. I don't even know what year that was built, but certainly before any
Before our
technology. But it's interesting how you brought up, I mean, I've been behind that building myself, I've never thought once about going on the roof. I mean, I just wouldn't think about that, like, oh, okay, this is like a ladder built, it's like built to go along the roof. Like, you can just jump, you don't even need you can just get on the roof.
Climb right on the railing.
But what about cameras? I mean, if the steamship in Hyannis, all the parking lots had cameras, and things happen in these lots at night. Not always a criminal thing, more about sort of activities to discourage. And I wasn't into the camera thing when it all first started, after 9/11. Now cameras everywhere. I think everybody has accepted it because they help a lot. So is there money available or, planning for some of the public places? When you said the lights aren't working, okay. Those are those old lights that we used to, that look like the gas lights from back 100 years ago. What Linda's talking about, the dark sky thing, is a bylaw, right, Andrew? Isn't it? So it's complicated here. There's always going to be another rule that goes against what you're trying to do. And we have that with lighting. They have to have certain lights or whatever. We've never talked about this before. This is a different thing now.
And I'm looking to learn exactly what you're talking about.
And the National Grid,
Certainly not going to have all the answers, but
yeah.
we feel as though at the police department that if we can take a proactive stance to alleviate crimes that may happen by utilizing these concepts, which is cheaper to do it at the beginning stages than at the end stages, then we're all for it. We're going to give you some feedback.
The bike paths are not bike paths. They're people paths. It's just as many people walking on them home at night as there is riding a bike. In fact, it's probably safer to walk than it is to ride a bike, because you're going to run into somebody. But, the lighting and that kind of thing has been just skimmed here and there. It hasn't really ever been tackled. Whether it's National Grid light, if there's poles that are located strategically just by accident near these bike paths where they can turn a light around instead of being on the street, have one going two different directions. There's a lot of different things that can be discussed.
Well, if we're worried about light, just as an example, DPW did a fantastic job on both Surfside and Old South Road by eliminating some of the shrub out there.
Yes,
So
that's,
the vehicles
yeah.
that are driving by can
Yeah.
see those on the bike path.
Yeah.
And that could be just enough
Yeah.
to prevent future crimes. It
Yeah.
may not require a new pole to be put up with bright lights
Yeah.
that we're worried about, but there are different concepts that we want to make sure that we work with you to talk about.
Yeah,
That
cars
would-
driving by, nobody's gonna just drive by at night
Right.
on the Nantucket and just not do anything. They're gonna call somebody.
So they have to be able to see.
The big city. That's right, exactly.
And the neighbors as well.
Does anyone else have any questions? I don't want, Andrew, are you good with this? Okay.
So thank you for your
We
time.
really appreciate you. This is really good. Thank you.
I rushed through, but if you have any questions after reviewing it.
Yeah. Right, so, where are we now?
Mr. Chairman. As you recall, over the winter, the commission helped in scoping out a study of the Old South Road, kind of happening in tandem with the Richmond development, but taking it a little bit step further and using the data that was collected as part of the Richmond development, using data that was collected as part of previous studies over, studies that were done over the past decade, bringing those together, bringing together the recommendations that have been made over the last decade, and I'm trying to bring this presentation up here. I'm sorry, I'm trying to talk and do it at the same time. So what you may recall, we executed a contract with Beta Group to take all the data that's existing now and our recommendations that have been developed to date over the last decade, and to evaluate those based on current conditions to see if those recommendations are still valid, and to see if there's any additional recommendations that we could make to make the area function better as far as vehicle congestion, safety for all modes of travel, and evaluate those so it can help inform some of our future capital plans. So that said, and I don't want to take too much away from Beta, but Ken and Tyler are here to go through a presentation. This is mostly focusing again on existing conditions, congestion, level of service, and safety, and again touching on recommendations that have been made over the past decade, and these include your accepted traffic studies, as well as some other developments that have not come to fruition, but have proposed ideas, such as the proposed hospital development on Milestone Road. Look at some of those ideas and evaluate those, and then we'll go one by one through the study intersections and collect comments from you, and if anyone briefly from the public has any concerns to help inform Beta. The strategy is to later this summer in August present what recommendations should be considered as an update to all of our plans and studies. So that said, I'll hand this over to Ken Ho to give you some of the his presentation, and like I said, once we get to the point of the intersections, you can again just pause for a second. We'll spend a few minutes talking about comments that you may have and the public may have.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for having us here tonight. Not every day we get to come to a beautiful island and work and enjoy the ocean and all that. So we really appreciate it. So with me tonight is Tyler, the router. So we're going to be doing a little tag team in terms of our presentation. So what we would like to do is to, I know there are about 8 items in here, but the first 5 items, it's going to be very quick. We'll just go through them just to refresh ourselves what's our project goals and whatnot. And item 6, which is the existing conditions, and that's where we want to spend the bulk of our time tonight. So what we would like to do really is to allow for about 5 minutes per intersection. So we have about 11 intersections. Some might take a little longer, and hopefully some will be very quick, less than 5 minutes. So with that, just very quickly, the project goal is really to develop, a short-term, a mid-term, and a long-term concept development for these intersections. And with the goal in mind that safety is important as we look through each intersection. Operational congestion, is there anything that we could do to relieve traffic or operational concerns? Connectivity with all modes of transportation, specifically cars, pedestrian, and bicycles. Certainly transit, bus stop locations and whatnot. Those are all critical components for this project goals. The scope of services that we have essentially consists of all the data that we have been provided as part of this studies. We look at the crash analysis that determines the type of accidents, safety, and item 5, which is the traffic analysis, where we looked at the existing condition, and we also look at the future condition, which we project out to 7 years, beyond, just to look at, how the intersection, if we were to do any improvements, what's going to be the level of service. And finally, really, is to develop alternative concepts. So we will go through item 1 through 5 tonight to give you an update, and we're going to take whatever comments that we get from you, and we're going to work on them and address them, individually per intersection and come up with a concept by improvements. As Mike had indicated, there were a lot of studies being done, and shown here are just some of the materials, basically, that was dated back, as far back as 2004, some of the intersections were looked at. And we have data we collected as recently as last year. So with the combinations of all this, we pulled everything together, and we'll touch on it, especially as we go through each of the intersections. So in total, there are 11 intersections that we looked at from a graphic standpoint. 3 of those intersections, there's this milestone along this corridor right here, running east-west. And the famous intersection, which is the crazy rotary, which we'll talk about a lot, number 4. And then there are 7 intersections, which is along Old South Road that we looked at, all the way up until here, which is Normandy Road. That's right here. Just very quickly, what this shows is on the top, Milestone Road right here, shown in green, which is under Mass DOT jurisdiction, shown here in green, just very quickly. And then down here at the bottom, Milestone Road and Old South Road, these are all what we call on the Federated Roadway, which is the SCP eligibility or the Surface Transportation Program. Just very quickly, background what those roads are. And again, what this area shows is the functionality classification. Every roadway in Massachusetts are being classified. So what it is shown here, this whole area that's in pink, which is what we call the urban overlay, and then here's the rural on top right here is the rural overlay right here. So all of this is that this roadway right here, Hopeless Road, Milestone Road, in green, there are, especially Milestone Road, it's classified as an urban, arterial, and then Hopeless Road right here, it's an urban rural collector. And same thing over here, Old South Road, essentially it's an urban collector that's shown over here. Just, so we're familiar with the classification of the roadways that we looked at. So as part of the data that we have compiled, there were counts collected in 2013 all the way up until 2015. So there were 24 hours count collected on the roadway system that we looked at, and there were also detailed peak hour. For example, in the morning from 7 to 9, how many cars making a left turn or right turn, at the rotary or at any of the intersections that we looked at. We also looked at the evening commute peak hour, which is from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. So those are all the data collectively that we've put, compiled together, and they were all done mostly, in July and August. Yes.
I have a question. What is the historic, because you're saying it's going to grow at 1%?
Yes.
What is the historical from 2004 till now? What has the growth been?
So what we have done is, to normalize it to 2017, we have used a 1% growth for each of the year, so that we have one set of data for 2017, and they were all brought up to 1% per year.
Right, but what has it been historically from all the different studies we've had?
all the studies, as recently as the Richmond, they have always used 1% per year. So in this study, we have included, any future development, for example, the Richmond, study which we have included, make sure all the volumes are reflected that we looked at when we looked at the analysis.
I guess I'm asking the question the wrong way, I guess. I understand how we're going to look at it going forward. I'm
Yeah.
saying, what has it been historically from '04 till 2016? What is the growth at these various intersections? If we've taken, Mike might know this.
Roughly 1%.
It's roughly one. That's
That number.
okay. Good. Thank you. I got
Sorry,
it. Yeah, I was just saying. I thought I was asking it wrong. Okay, got it.
No. That's the existing 2017. So we go it up to 7 years, which is to 2024 with 1% per year. I know it's very hard to see this volume. There are a lot of information. So what we have done is we have provided an 11 by 17 hard copy, and the information is going to be also posted online. If needed, anyone can download the information. And I will discuss a little more as we walk through each of the intersections later on for each of the locations. So just to very quickly, this is just the AM and PM 2024. So just a very quick summary of the key locations. For example, on Old South Road, your average daily traffic volume going through this section of the roadway, which we call ADT, it's a little over 16,000 cars. And to us, traffic engineer, if you drive Old South Road, 16,000, that's a lot of a car. And Milestone, it's even higher. It's over 7,500 cars on a given day, and this is during the peak month. So you get two key roadways which we're looking at, and they are very, very high volume. Some of the side streets are not as high, but Fairground is high, almost close to 10,000 cars. So that's something that we will discuss a little more, at the intersection of Fairground and Old South Road. What we should do at that intersection. This is so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have Tyler come up here and talk a little about some of the safety analysis, the crash data.
Hi there. For the record, Tyler DeRuiter from Beta Group. So as Ken noted, we went through a bunch of crash data from Mass DOT. This here is a map provided by MPEDC that sort of summarizes the high crash locations that are of interest. You can see in the figure that there's a nice little football shape over Old South Road, kind of where the Richmond property is. So that's an area of interest for us in this study. We also went through Mass DOT's information. So this shows the Highway Safety Improvement Plan, or HSIP clusters. They're all color-coded. They kind of look at the number of crashes over a certain number of years. So here we have 4 different clusters within the study area that fall within crash clusters. You've got some bicycle clusters over by the Rotary. That's from 2005 to 2014. And the rest of them are all vehicle, just general crash clusters from various years. As everybody else knows, there was a road safety audit performed for Milestone Road from the Rotary all the way down to Siasconset, I believe. So we looked at that, and we sort of mentioned some of those things as part of our recommendations at the end. Again, looking at Mass DOT, we took the most recent 3 years of available data. So in their end, this is all stuff that comes from the Registry of Motor Vehicles. They have up to 2014 as of right now. So we did 2012, 2013, and 2014. The table shows just kind of a summary of one of the intersections. So we took the one that had the highest number of crashes, which was Fairgrounds Road. There was 11 over the 3 years, and we kind of break it down. This further breaks down the rest of the intersections. The most common things we found were rear ends. We wanted to show pedestrian and bike crashes and injury crashes. So looking at this, there weren't a whole lot of injuries in the 3 years that we examined, and there also weren't a whole lot of pedestrian and bicycle crashes. You can see here that the Rotary had 7 crashes, Fairgrounds had 11, so those are the key kind of intersections we're looking at. And then Milestone at Nobody had 6. That was the third most. And finally, we took into account the crash rates. So this is a comparison of the number of crashes that occur over a certain number of years and the volume that travels through the intersection, and develops a rate that you might expect per 1 million vehicles entering the intersection. We did this for all of our intersections and came up with this table. So the state and District 5 for Mass DOT, their average crash rate is 0.58. And we summarized all the intersections here. As you can see, none of them are higher than the average rates. So this means that despite the number of crashes that were reported to Mass DOT, none of them are significant in the state size. Now, one thing to note is that, as noted in RSA, is that these are crashes that are reported to the state. That doesn't take into account minor fender benders that don't involve police activity or any of that. So where there may be some crashes, they're not all reported. And do you want to cover that?
So the next thing that we did was to analyze each of the intersections. So when we analyzed the intersection in terms of operational capacity, we would rate the intersection, which I will get into later on as we go through each of the locations. Is currently this intersection operating at level service F. So F in this case, which is shown here, the operational is graded level service from A to F. So if an intersection is graded at level service F, so what that means is, see this less than 50 seconds right here? So if you are at an intersection, in this case, there are no traffic lights, so it just be a stop sign. And if you have waited more than 50 seconds, we would rate that intersection as operating at level service F. And some could say, oh, there is actually more than 50 seconds. There's some intersection I'll be there for like more than 2 minutes. So is there such a thing as a bad app and a good app? So it all, they're all relative. When it's an F, it's an F. And we would rate, for example, intersection A, which means if you have wait less than 10 seconds at a stoplight, so we would grade that as a level service F. So that's really what that is when we run the analysis. So this is a summary of the level service analysis, and I'll just walk through, give you a very quick summary of some of the intersections, and then again I'll emphasize them as I walk through each of the intersections. And I'll start with, in this case, on Milestone, which at the roundabout, Rotary actually. So the analysis shows that on Sparks, it's operating level service F, whether it's in the morning peak hour or the evening commute peak hour. Likewise on Old South Road, whether it's the AM in the morning or the PM, they're all operating a level service F. So overall, we grade this intersection operating level service F, even though some of the other approach, it's actually shown at level service C. And I do want to note that while we are only showing the level service at the chart here, the analysis also shows is queuing, like in terms of how far cars are queued back at some of these intersections in terms of the roundabout. And I know, as was interesting, even around 4 or 3 or 4 p.m., we were actually observing some, especially around 4:30, we were observing some fairly long queue when we were out there today on Sparks, and also actually on South Road there was some queue. There was some along Orange Street also in terms of queuing. So this is just a summary of the level service, under the existing conditions. And we will have to look into the future too, analyzing it based on whatever improvements that, we're going to recommend. For example, which we will discuss a little more, is an improvement at this rotary would be a modern roundabout, which we call it, which basically facilitate all the movement for all the approach, not just certain approach. In this case, at Monomoy, at the intersection, it's operating acceptable level service B and C, and I think a lot has to do with, if you look at the traffic volume on Monomoy, the percentage during the morning or the evening commute, it's actually less than 10% of the volume coming out on the side street that this total intersection is processing. For example, in the morning, this intersection during the peak hour, you pick between 7 and 9, you pick one highest peak hour, this intersection process, a little over 1,000 cars, and less than 10% of those volume are coming out from Monomoy. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to do anything, and we'll discuss it later on, because the approach is kind of a little funky, so and we can discuss that a little later on. On Populous, in this case, same thing. The approach is showing level service C, and then this left turn is showing A and B, and we know that volume is actually heavy. That right turn and the left turn, duo, which we'll discuss a little more later on. And I think across the board right here, from, this is Old South Road, from all the way to, Fairgrounds, all the way east to, Novadere. I think it's safe to say that a lot of the side street, it's having a tough time entering the main street, which is Old South Road. And a lot has to do with because Old South Road is so heavy, and the side street just couldn't find a gap trying to get into the intersection. And we're going to discuss later on in terms of what potential improvement that we could do to try to help with that. So overall, I think the main line is shown as A, but because it's just free flow, the analysis shows. But your side street is sacrificing. Even though it shows level service E, you're really at capacity, and it's close to failing. So I think with that, what I'd like to do is, at least within the next 15 minutes or so, is to walk through each of the intersections and to discuss basically 3 key things. One is we will identify some of the deficiencies, the volume, the safety, the operations, and also mention what are some of the studies that were looked at previously, and then we'll just kind of open it up to to the board. If there's any additional comments or concern that you have, we'll take it with us and we'll address them in the next round of our work there. So I think the first intersection is Milestone at Monomoy, and as I had indicated early on, from a traffic volume standpoint, on the side street Monomoy, it's very light and less than about 50 cars coming out here. And the existing traffic control is, you got a stop sign here, and it's actually a yield as you're approaching here. So that's a U sign right here. And while the level service shows that it's, fairly good, C's and B's. There are certainly improvements, that we think we could do for this intersection. This is actually one of the intersections that was done by Mass DOT as part of their road safety audit. They have some recommendations. They recommend that this intersection should be tee off, like a conventional T instead of with the splitter islands right here. And they also recommend that the bus stop location that's shown here in blue needs to be looked at if we could relocate that intersection, mainly because if we were to tee it off, then we would like this bus stop to hopefully go towards west of the intersection. And they're also recommending this crosswalk should be considered at this intersection. So there's a little history. In 2004, which the town looked at this intersection, and as part of this study right here, it is shown as the intersection being teeing off right here. And a lot of time when you tee off an intersection, it provides that traffic calming effect. For example, currently, especially if you're coming from Monomoy heading towards Old South Road, this radius right here is so wide open. And plus, it is a yield sign, and a lot of time people have a tendency, to just drive really fast and blow through this, intersection. But when you tee it off right here, more of a 90-degree, so that forces people to really slow down as they make that right turn. So those are the, safety, traffic calming effect that you can produce. So as part of our task is to look at what was done previously, and one of the things that we, when we first looked at this is this concept right here, showing that there are two lanes, shown as a left turn lane and an exclusive right turn lane. Based on the low traffic volume that you have, we really don't think you need two lanes approaching this intersection. And we think all you need is just one lane. And we certainly agree with this island right here because that helps to channelize and facilitate the move right here. And as part of our assignment, we will also look at, if we were to provide a crosswalk over here, what we would like to do is probably look into somehow, create this median. See this median that's shown right here? We would make sure that the crosswalk, so that pedestrian can also rest if they need it, and the island right here could be a potential refuge for them. So instead of walking all the way from here to here, being so long and exposed, so creating a refuge island sometimes, minimize the potential of pedestrian being hit by a car. So those are the features that we will look into as we develop our concept. There's another study that was actually done. It was done in 2013. At one point, there was a proposed hospital project, and this is, and as part of that project, the mitigation had shown again this intersection being tee off, and in this case, it's shown as just one lane. And as we all know, the hospital project is no longer, it exists at this point. But as part of that project, they have looked at improving the intersection. So I think those were some of the history and background, provided regarding, potential improvement for this intersection. Did I miss anything, Tyler? So with that, I'm just going to open up to see if the board have any additional concern, or if we overlooked something, that should be also looked at and consider as we move forward, developing a concept improvement for this intersection. If not, I'll just move on to the next intersection.
Okay. Yep, Andrew, go ahead, sorry.
the bike path so it meets up where the cut through is at Opus is something I think we should take a look at. And I do think that really there's more of a need. I don't think there's a lot of need for a crosswalk per se unless it's accompanied with some further bike path type work or
Yeah.
something along that side. I do think we should look at a left-hand turn, from Monomoy and for Opus. Like I said, the right-of-way is wide enough through there.
Yep.
And I mean, even a reconstruction of that particular road with a median or something might improve safety in that one stretch. So I want to make sure that that's out there. It's a concept we've considered in the past, and I don't want to let this meeting go by with it.
150 feet, right?
What's that?
150 feet, right? I think it's 150.
I think you're right. It's one of the widest right-of-ways we have, so there are not restrictions that we have on a lot of the roads with only being 33 or 40 feet.
So are you sort of saying position it so that the bike path, if it goes in, has a place too? Put it on one side of the right of way, so if in future a bike path goes to Monomoy, you can position it without,
Right,
I
and
gotcha.
actually you're inbound, you came down the Pulpus Road, you wouldn't have to cross at that particular
Right.
location out.
you could stay on.
Just follow it in and stay on essentially the right side of the street as you're heading.
Yeah, I bike back there, and it's dangerous to try to cross that street. You know, if you could stay on the right, it'd be a huge help.
Oh, that's good. That's actually, I don't remember that being discussed, but it's a great idea. So,
The next intersection is a milestone at, Opus. And, again, this intersection, while it shows, levels of a C, that's acceptable. And your heavy movement is really, this right turn right here, and also this left turn. And the one thing that we found out, which I didn't mention earlier, is when we look at all the data that's been collected, typically we look for travel pattern trend. And what's interesting is we found out that there aren't any. In the morning it's heavy, in the evening it's heavy. They're actually, we were wondering if in the morning the east or the westbound might be heavier than the eastbound, or the eastbound is heavier, or the reverse, in the afternoon. But we noticed that the volume actually pretty much stays the same. Whether it's the morning or the evening, they're all heavy, during those periods. So in this case, both in the morning and in the afternoon, this right turn is very heavy, and this left turn, and certainly on Milestone, it's really heavy, over at least 600 to 700 cars on each direction. So this intersection was also looked at very recently by Mass DOT as part of the road safety audit, and one of the things that they looked at is the first thing, as a quick, short-term improvement, is that this middle stub right here, they recommend that link to be closed, because there's really no need for that. And when we were out there observing, everybody just used this, over here, and also this coach right here. And if there's anything else, today, basically, it's stop control that's right here, and also right here, and then the yield control sign that's over here. So, as an immediate improvement is to close that, and as a more midterm or long-term is to tee off the intersection at this location, which we agree. And they also recommended crosswalk installation be considered at this intersection. And so in 2004, the town also have looked at this intersection. And again, this is one that we would agree, basically teeing it off and creating more of a 90-degree intersection, which is very conventional, and also creating that traffic calming effect. Based on the volume, in this case, we would agree that, you know, it would be benefit to have an exclusive right turn lane because your volume is very heavy in the morning, close to 300 cars making that, you know, right turn, and also, you know, that exclusive left turn movement. And what we would look at is also, as Andrew had pointed out, you know, the left turn lane, which we will also look at because there's a very heavy left turn movement going into from Milestone into you know, Focus. So that's something that we will look at as part of our assignment. As part of the hospital project, again, you know, they look at this intersection. So they actually, you know, propose a roundabout at this intersection. So what we would do is we certainly will look at this intersection to see, you know, if a roundabout would likewise be, you know, be beneficial. And based on this concept right here, typically on the roundabout, our first concern is it requires a lot of right-of-way. But this concept right here shown, if you look at this dotted line right here, so that's the right-of-way, and it is a very, very wide right-of-way. So it looks like it could easily fit a roundabout if that's the concept that you know, we were going to follow. So certainly this is something that we will look into. I think that's all we have for this intersection, unless someone else has other comments. Okay.
I won't comment.
Okay.
You go
So
ahead.
we could always come back later on if needed. The next intersection is Milestone and Nobody, and this intersection right here. Again, this is one of those intersections when we look at the traffic volume itself. On the side street, it's actually pretty heavy. You know, if there's anything else, the three approach, you know, volumes are pretty heavy, and I think a lot of this volume right here, it's coming from the airport. You know, people trying to avoid Old South Road and try to cut through here, and you know, it is 45 miles per hour posted on this section of Milestone, and there's a very heavy left turn movement at this intersection, and again, Mass DOT looked at this intersection as part of their roadway safety audit. They recommended that the passing zone within this section of the roadway be looked into if, you know, it could be eliminated just because of, you know, potential, you know, the speeding. There are certainly some intersection sign, you know, warning signs ahead telling people that, hey, you're approaching, you know, a busy intersection, be posted as you approach this intersection. There were other minor comments related to, you know, stop line and whatnot. So when we looked at this, and when we looked at the traffic volume and the analysis results, because, you know, folks just couldn't get out of this side drive, and if it's anything else, from a safety standpoint, what we would look at is this approach is really wide, so we would consider some kind of an island over here. Basically, the island will serve two purposes. One is pedestrian safety, because right now pedestrian has to walk all the way unprotected across this section of the roadway. So with some kind of an island, so they only have to cross from here to here, and then there's a refuge area, and then they'll cross, you know, the second time on the other section of the roadway. And the other thing is also with the island, you know, we were able to, you know, safely better channelize some of the traffic that's coming in and out of this intersection. This is something also perhaps we'll look at, you know, a left turn lane if that's, you know, feasible to facilitate some kind of a median. In terms of the left turn, which I'll talk a little more about when, you know, we discuss some of the intersection at Old South Road being proposed as part of that Richmond project. to create some sort of a two-step left turn to help facilitate, so that someone coming out of here, they could be managed better so that they could safely enter the intersection. So I think that's all I have. Feel free to jump in, Tyler, if I missed anything.
Well, my only comment, a lot of the DOT stuff
Yeah.
talked about a lot of signage.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is people, you put too many signs up and people don't pay attention to the important ones.
Sign pollution.
Yeah, we get a lot of that. And so it's like on the bike paths, and they mentioned the bike path signage here.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, I think there should be, on the bike paths, I think the sign should be at the 2 or 3 key intersections, not at every single street. The burden shouldn't be on the bicyclists because then they stop paying attention.
Right.
And then they get to an important intersection like, like this one, and they blow right through it.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't. So there's,
Reading.
yeah, and because they don't pay attention to all the others, and they really shouldn't. They're not dangerous intersections. There's not. It should be, the burden should be on the cars. What happens now? The cars pull out because they're worried about other cars, and they pull right in front of the bicyclists and they stop.
Yeah.
And so and where the burden should be on the cars to be back, look both ways, and come out, except where they have where they have the dangerous spots.
Right.
So there's a couple things like that I would love to see considered in general when we're looking at this.
Sorry.
Sorry, one thing I want to just mention on this that might, and this sort of goes with Kevin Marshall's presentation is, I know there are a lot of people that don't see that bike path there at
Yeah.
all. They don't even know that it's there, so they're riding on the road. And it might be just not a matter of removing all the vegetation, but maybe selectively clearing some of the lower branches, so again, you get the visual of, so people know the bike path is there. So it might be something to take a look at in that intersection, and maybe not through signage, but better visibility.
Yeah, if you're looking from here to the right, you can't see anything.
Right.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good point. We did note here in my note, but I didn't mention it. When we drove this intersection, whether you're looking with your right or your left, especially at this time, the vegetation is really, it's amazing that they're all sticking out over here. So if someone's really stopping at this stop bar, they couldn't see anything. And we noticed a lot of them have to really pull out, including myself, to get a good sight line. So I think pruning the vegetation definitely will help.
Can I just add one thing real quick? It'll come up again,
Yeah.
the passing issue. Mike knows I'm thinking about that after you said it. This is a huge issue on this, and it goes all the way out basically past Russell's Way, in my opinion. Should be no passing. I know it's a state road. Mike's had them here looking at this. What happens is there's a lot of truck traffic. We haven't even talked about that yet.
Yeah.
There's a lot of truck traffic here that is not typical of other small towns like this. When a truck is coming on Milestone going out of town, and let's just say the truck is turning right, and it's slowing down, and the car behind it can pass it. It's like almost normal for that to happen. That car that's taking a left doesn't actually see
What's behind it?
that truck, that car doing that, because they went like this,
Right.
they're looking this way, they're
Right.
looking this way. They pull out, and you've got yourself that Unstoppable movie thing going on. Bang, right there. It happens on Bunker Road a lot. Doesn't happen here as often, but it's exactly the same scenario. It's just not as common here.
Right.
Bunker Road, if that's not on your study, but this passing thing is a problem on Milestone. Because it's always been that way. There's been passing allowed all the way to Bean Hill for years. It's just whatever. It should be eliminated. And I know it's a complicated process. You can't just go out there and start painting lines. But it's definitely something that if this study or some other study could make that suggestion, it might be a little more, it might be able to push it along.
Well, yeah, we'll definitely look into,
I mean, there's no need to go fast here. I mean, I don't sound like I'm 100 years old, but we don't need to go that fast here.
I think most of the DOT recommendations were to get rid of those lines around those areas. Most of the 2 or 3 of those were all there.
If there's anything else, that would help our case, from a town standpoint, because their own people, it's recommended that it should be eliminated.
Yeah.
So that will help, if we go in and lobby for it, that's gonna help us, get rid of it.
Well, there's so many more box trucks, and that's the
That's another
problem.
vision issue.
It's the vision. They're high. Trucks are high. It's another reason.
Joe?
What about a right turn lane then, on Nobody Farm Road?
That's something that we're gonna consider, because of the, the volume.
Yeah, it looks like,
It's like
Yeah,
fairground,
it's,
the fairgrounds is a natural one.
natural.
yeah, you have about, close to 200, about 140 making right, and then close to
Right.
200 making a left. So, definitely, we look into, an exclusive left turn lane and a right turn lane. Okay, I'll go to, the Rotary. This intersection right here, process close to 2,500 cars in a peak hour, in the morning or in the evening. So if you compare, the other couple of intersections that we have talked about, they're processing like about 1,500, and the last one, which is also about 1,500-1,600 cars. So this one right here processed over, 2,500 cars, and there are definitely, a lot of operational, problem with this rotary, and whether it's the RSA that Mass DOT did, or the previous study that the town had looked at, which is in 2004, trying to make this into a roundabout. We actually would like to call it a modern roundabout.
Yes, yeah.
Basically, what it is, which is, again, 2006, the town also looked at this.
We weren't ready yet.
We-
We're ready
at the
now.
time,
We're ready
I
now.
was told.
Trust me, we're ready now.
I was told, yes.
We didn't know what they were yet.
Right, and I think a good example is this intersection right here. I mean, this modern roundabout, it create all the necessary movements. No one is stopping. They're all yield. Just you just keep it flowing, at all time. And this is actually, it's not quite a 2-lane roundabout, but I would call it a hybrid. And it's because you got physically 2 lanes here, but one of the lane is actually leading into, the other approach. And so I think a modern roundabout would be a solution for this intersection, if it's anything else. There are also a few things that, as we look at this intersection, is, this corner, this business right here, it's basically, there are no curbing. It's all wide open, so cars just blow in, blow out, and, they come in anywhere they like. So I think that needs to be managed. Did I say something funny?
No, it's all Nantucket stuff. There's some right-of-way issues there.
Yeah.
There's a big gas station. It's all right.
So that's the Inquirer and Mirror, I think, that's the name of the establishment. So that, those are things that we will look at from, safety and to manage traffic. It's just one example. So certainly I think a modern roundabout is the way to go for this roadway. And again, the hospital project at the time also recommended a modern roundabout at this location.
Yes. Oh, Paul, I'm sorry. Sorry, I gotta turn around. I got my neck is stuck in one direction.
Could you please go back to
Sure.
your first slide for the rotary?
Yeah. this is bus stop right here, they're all existing.
Okay, they're in the
Yeah.
wrong place.
Yeah, that,
Oh, yeah, this is the GIS mapping that we, maybe it's outdated.
This was taken from Google Maps, so wherever it's pinpointed in Google is where it shows up.
Okay, we will update.
Can you work with them to?
Oh, yeah,
Because
well-
that just looks really bad and
I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even bother looking. I just said, oh, that's something, who cares about that?
Thank
Got it
you.
now.
Yeah.
Good eye, Paula.
Yeah, good catch.
You're right, Paul.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I want to put in a plug too for, I know, another one of your favorite projects, but it's for the crossing or an extension of a sidewalk multi-use path on
Yes.
the business side running from basically Sparks Avenue up to the fairgrounds. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic that goes on that route that would take the fairgrounds road bike path, and it requires numerous crossings right now across Old South Road. So it probably shows up in your next slide, but I don't want to overlook it because the connection, it connects with Paula's bus stops, and it also connects into the Fairgrounds Road and the crossing that will happen
Newtown, yeah.
at Old South and Fairgrounds.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure to mention that now.
Okay.
It's a project we've been looking at for quite some time.
It's not on anything else.
It's, yeah, we got it. So the next intersection at, Old South Road at Fairgrounds. This is a fairly heavily traveled intersection. If you recall, the ADT, the average daily traffic volume on Fairground, it's close to 10,000 cars on a given day. And as they approach this intersection, so this intersection right here, overall, it's processing, close to 1,600 cars any given peak hour. And all your volumes are, Old South Road is still a little on the high side, which is close to like 700 on each of the approach. And then on Fairground, during the peak hour, you're looking at, close to, again, depending on the time of the day, it's over 400 cars entering from here. And a lot of them, you are over 300 making that right turn, and then over 100 making the left turn. So your left and right are equally as heavy. And likewise, in the evening hours, they're also very heavy. So this is, this intersection, unlike the next few intersections which we're going to talk about, it's really, really, heavily traveled. So the level of service, it's really, poor level of service at, just because your side street on Fairground is so heavy, and there are a lot of problems. So the previous study in 2004 looked at basically creating two lanes, left turn lane and a right turn lane, and this would help manage your queuing because you got two lanes. But I think you would still experience that the operational problem on the side street. It will still be level service F because they just couldn't find a gap to enter the intersection, and the volume is just so heavy. So to facilitate, to really allow the traffic on Fairground to all kind of have an equal chance or opportunity to enter the intersection, it's a roundabout that was looked at in 2006. And so basically, the minute you consider a roundabout at this intersection, now whether you're coming from Old South, from the east or from the west or from Fairground, now everyone has a fair play at this intersection, and you allow traffic to constantly move at this location. So this is something that we would consider and look into as part of the concept of development. And certainly we'll look at the potential, you know, if it's anything on the right-of-way impact, because that is very important. So I think that's, you know, that's pretty much it about this intersection.
Yeah, about, parallel to fairgrounds, is that Gold Star?
Yeah.
The cut-through, you mean the cut-through
next-
road?
The next
Oh, the next
intersection.
intersection?
And that loops over to fairgrounds.
Yeah.
I'm not, I think so.
Yeah.
No, it's
No,
good.
no, no,
Loop- that
no,
moves
no.
to
No,
it's
Sparks.
back by the Yankee.
It's Milestone.
Sparks.
Milestone
Yeah,
Lane
Milestone
is
Lane
the name
and
of that
Gold
road.
Okay, Milestone Lane,
And Gold Star.
okay, whatever, it's like a towny cut-through
Yeah.
is what, wonder if there's anything that's worth looking at that. Because what happens, people cut cavies and stuff, cut through, and then turn left on Sparks.
Yeah, I'm not surprised because, you know, people will find alternate route to,
Yeah,
because
and then it's sort of
fairground is so bad.
Yeah, then it's sort of, yeah, right, and so then you come the other way, avoid the intersection, but it sort of jams things up here with fairgrounds.
Well, this,
You
this,
know,
Don't tell, don't tell all our
I
stuff.
think the answer is
don't tell the
already
secrets.
well, the other issue is we've got the selectmen, selectmen have a letter on Newtown Road, and we've set, the police station in Newtown has become pretty much a speedway. And, you know, so that's one of the other, you know, so people are trying to avoid this intersection, and now they're running up and down Newtown Road to get, right, you know, to get to the other roundabout, to get to the Stop and Shop. So I think it's a similar
That's true.
situation.
That's even worse, you're right.
100% correct,
Yeah,
except that there's three big dips in Newtown, so nobody's speeding. But he's right.
Well-
Actually, remember I told you earlier, Ken, is we weren't ready for a roundabout on Nantucket until we built one. Now we can't understand why we don't have 5 more, okay? And what Matt is talking about is the roundabout at the post office is now considered the shortcut. As crazy as it sounds, we actually try to get to that, because it actually works. Whereas when you go into the boat especially, you zip, from that street road, boom, bang, see you later. That's what people do. So, the one thing I wanna say to you though, Ken, you did mention it, but you didn't realize you actually said it in the sense of, we already have a turning, this is the only road on the Nantucket that is technically as a turning lane, even though it's not striped.
Yeah.
Believe me,
People
it's used.
use it as a,
Because it would be backed up all the way to, you know, it would be back up to Sousa's if you didn't have it.
yeah.
But it's used in a natural way, like everybody just does it. People do a hand thing here, and it kind of works the way it is, not great, but it's because there's vision, it's because everybody's sort of slowing down already, so it sort of works, but other intersections don't work like that. This one does, only because of the natural sort of evolution of how it ends up. But, I mean, we've got plenty of right-of-way here for this too, by the way. Tons of room, so, I mean, this is hopefully the
Well, it's visually good.
second one on the list, isn't it, Mike? Yeah, I thought, okay.
Mhm.
We got more people at this meeting we've had in 10 years. Amazing. So, what was the next thing?
So what, the next intersection is Amelia, but before
Oh, boy.
I get into this intersection, as part of our scope,
This is a new mistake.
yeah,
Yeah. New.
as part of our scope of work is to look at it from, again, you know, a big picture level standpoint, you know, 10,000 feet is, you know, so you have 2 corridors of roadway that we're looking at, you know, Milestone and Old South Road. So what we will look at is, this is something we talked to Mike earlier, is are there opportunities that we could create some kind of a north-south connector from, you know, Milestone to Old South? Is there some way that, you know, we could create some kind of a connector? Or, you know, if it goes further south, from Old South Road to, what was that road, Kyle? Tacoma.
Rugged.
You know, is there a possibility we could create some kind of a connector so we could relieve some of the volume, whether it's on Old South Road or on Milestone? So that's something that we'll look at again, from a big picture standpoint, opportunity to, help relieve traffic at those two roadways.
People are already doing that.
Yeah.
If I have to go to Amelia Drive,
Yeah.
I'll come up Tacoma
Okay.
and come down, and I'll go up Tacoma to come down Young's. I never go down Old South Road to get to either one of those roads, and then I'll go back out with a bunch of everybody else. Goes back down Amelia, back down Tacoma. That is already being done
Okay.
for those of us who live in sort of in the Surfside area. So people are already figured that that's the way to get into those areas from the back without a whole lot of traffic. So it takes us off of Old South Road anyway. Those of us who live here know every shortcut on this planet. And the summer people are now getting in the way.
I mean, this road here, Ken, this situation here is, I mean, it's come up a lot in the last year and a half because of the new market and just neighbors
Parking.
parking on street. The road should have been 28 feet wide, it's 24.
It's terrible.
Complicated.
Yeah.
This is like the modern Westchester Street, that's what I call it.
It's like an
Um,
obstacle course.
Theoretically, the discussion about a road to get the mouse on has been brought up in public in the last year along the bike path. Andrew's
Hospital.
got the answer to that. The right turn only coming out of this road, one way in. There's a couple of different little things that have been floated because the trees along this road are
Yeah.
kind of mature now. To widen it would be complicated. It's sort of in flux, but Linda's right. The Tacoma got paved recently. That's new paved. So people kind of zip that way because they know you can get actually back to Fairgrounds a lot easier. that
There's a
way.
sidewalk there.
It's just easier. You come out of the bank, don't take a left, take a right, it's faster. So it's just, people are figuring it out. But again, it is a problem and definitely has been discussed in the last year significantly.
Andrew?
One more
Andrew.
comment? One more comment?
Chairman, I
Yeah.
just want, you all need to be up to date on what's public road, what isn't.
Yeah.
So Tacoma is a public road running in from Fairgrounds to, not to Young's Way, but just shy of Tom's Way. So that's a laid out public road. That's all set. Amelia Drive, through the process, have given a $10,000 gift, which the town accepted, I think, last week, to lay that out as a public road. Amelia is not a public road, it's a private road. In order to get to the next level where, parking and everything else could be regulated on it, we need to move to that next standard. Another concept that we've been at least looking at is working with the property owners to get connections through Amelia Drive into the parking lot and maybe into Wade Drive, which is currently called Wade Drive. We don't know the final name yet. But the road runs parallel to Amelia and on town property. So I think too that, there are some mature trees on Amelia, but it's not everywhere. So there's opportunity to maybe move the tree lawn back, create spaces for at
Those
least
trees are all on
one
this side. They're
of
not on the other
on-street
side.
parking.
They're all on this side, for the
To
most
make
part.
that work better. As far as the road connection through, remember we have water company property here. We have wellheads and there's been some new wells installed, so that is going to be more problematic. There is a prior road,
Hmm.
in the state forest, which is sort of one of the few opportunities for, north-south type connection.
Question. Andrew, when we had the conference call with Jack, myself, and John, and you were talking about doing something in the road so there was a way station for people to cross over, and they were going to do something in the middle which would slow people down anyway. You might want to bring that up.
Right, when we get to the Richmond, maybe I have a slide.
Yep.
On how Richmond is, basically a series of left-hand turn, median type, development that's in the roads are better organized, and I think that same application is something that I think will work here. It has to be specifically studied, just like it was in the Richmond area, because, again, with the goal of providing for a left-hand turn or a through lane, depending on the volume, so. Right.
So we can come back to this later on. Andrew was referring to, the treatment, like some kind of median and left turn lane, which is similar to near the Richmond site. I'll get to that later on. So if it's anything else, I think what we will look at also in terms of improvements is, we were told this was at one point it was designed for a bus bay,
Yeah.
and I guess currently the bus doesn't even use it at all, or do they still use it?
What?
It is used sometimes.
Sometimes.
And
Okay.
the history of that is it was just supposed to be our standard pull-off, like the one in front of the fish market.
Right, which is right here.
Um,
Down, further down.
No, he's got it.
No,
It's right there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which, and then there was some concern that that would be used as a turning lane, or a, go around lane for people.
Oh,
who
like
are not
a
sure.
jug
Yeah.
handle, like
So,
U-turn?
yeah,
Okay.
we put the fence and
To
the
be crazy
shrubs
there.
in, which made it not such a great bus pull-off. So it is used sometimes, it is not used other times. It's a difficult maneuverability because of that fence and hedge that was put in.
So in addition to, looking at creating a more conventional pull-off like here, in front of the bus, of the fish market and the meat market place here, is we will also look at how we can make the trail multi-use connection to, this area, and also likewise the crossing. So that's what we will look into improving, making sure that, the bus pull-in and the, that trail, connectivity, it's all safely done as part of this intersection.
That's where the crosswalk is what we were all talking about on the phone.
Yeah.
You were on the phone to put the grass median in that spot,
Okay.
so people could get from the shuttle or the bike path to a safety zone in the middle, and then cross over the outbound lane. So it was very similar to what Richmond's doing further up, so people can get across from there and then get over to the new market, whatever's going on over there, the restaurant and stuff. So this is, that one section to the left there is what we were talking about.
I see. So, like this section right
Yeah.
here. Great comment. The next intersection, which is Old South Road and Young, the roadway width at Young is very narrow. It's barely 18 feet, and it's a two-way traffic. And the volume is, not as high as some of the other intersections. There are about, depending on time of the day, about 80 cars that comes out the driveway. So if it's anything else, I think, we will look into, making sure creating some sort of a, again, bus bay because of the bus stop location, and also look at how that could be integrated safely, nicely, part of the crossing, and on that side also. So that's what we will look at as part of this intersection.
I think we thought that this intersection was the lowest priority. Jack, wasn't this one of the lower priority ones, John?
Yes.
Because, again, most of us will use Tacoma
Yeah.
to come in the back way to the gym or some of the other places that are out there. You have to be insane to sit there for 15 minutes trying to get out there. But a lot of it is because it's so narrow and your line of sight can be a little dicey. But we figured this was the least problematic of all of the entrances coming onto Old South Road.
The next intersection at Lover's Lane, and this is, again, the volume is not very high coming out of Lover's Lane. For example, in the morning, there's probably about 20 cars coming out, And certainly on the other side drive too, it's very low, 1 or 2 cars. And so what we will look at as part of our project is to, again, this crosswalk right here, we'll look at how we can make it safer. And again, combination of the bus stop locations, and so ideally, we always prefer the bus stop locations to be on the far side, but in this case, we have all the driveways, so we certainly will look at how we can, create the bus bay and the crossing safely at this intersection.
One of those drivers didn't shut off.
Your next
Yeah,
drawing will
that's-
show
Oh, okay.
Raglan Avenue
Okay.
is getting shut off.
Oh, yes,
You got a picture of it here, but.
yeah.
Right.
Number
Yeah.
9, Raglan Avenue is getting shut off and moved.
So as part of the Richmond project, so this is what we talked about, between Lover's Lane all the way to, this is where the existing,
Yes, yeah.
yeah, and I'm going to show it. This is one of the close-up pictures, and this is one of the driveway. I have another slides that look at further east, which is the intersection of Gretland and Goldfinch. And again, this is the other section of it. So as part of the Richmond project, Gretland is going to be relocated from here to here, which is approximately 350 feet plus or minus. And that approach, it's going to have a left turn lane and a right turn lane. And if it's anything else, what we have talked about earlier on is the treatment of Old South Road, which is basically, if you look at this is a raised median, that's right here, and also, over here. So there's a left turn lane that's created to enter into the new, Gretland. And in terms of the two-step, left turn that we have talked about, I think a good example is, I can go back to the other slide too, but I just want to show. So if someone is coming out of, Goldfinch who wants to make a left turn, so what they'll do is, they could actually make, the first step is to enter, this section of, Old South Road, and then they can wait here, and then they would enter safely when they find a gap. So that's like a much, safe way of making that left turn instead of today, where you try to, dodge heavy traffic. Just want to go back to, there you go, Lover's Lane again. So again, same thing, this is the new site drive on Richmond. We have this island right here created, and also that left turn lane that's over here. Again, if someone wants to make that left turn, they could proceed, and then they could also wait here. The key thing is we want to make sure that the island is designed wide enough so that there's room, for a car to, wait right here to enter. I do want to, just based on our experience with this type of design, I do want to note, and which we will also look into, whether it's this location or, if this also should be treated the same, where we talked about earlier at Amelia, those approach. It's sometimes when you create a left turn pocket in a car, basically, the through movement, now they have their own lane, so they have a tendency to, just drive a little faster. So we got to make sure that, the potential safety, features, will not be overlooked when we look at a design such as this type of, configuration on the roadway. So I think from the new Gretland treatment with this type of design, based on our conference call, we're going to look at the treatment all the way to Amelia to see, if this with all the side streets, coming out into Old South Road.
I have a question. Were you running all these as 1% increases from these side streets?
When we,
Yeah, okay.
the answer is yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's
Because I have a few,
overall.
my sense is they may be, there's going to be a lot of retail, there's going to be a lot more build out there. I think they may be substantially more than that.
Yeah.
So I would test these against sort of a little bit more of an increase on those roads
Yeah.
and make sure that this is going to handle it.
Okay.
Because I have a feeling that it's not going to be a 1% increase.
Mhm.
I mean, I might be wrong here, but, yeah, I just,
mean, it's, in the previous 1%, I think half, it's complicated, it could be 2 now,
Right.
versus before it might have been half percent. The other thing too, Ken, God, we're going back to the old days of talking about cars again, but,
I'm going to get there in a little
I
bit.
know you are, I'm trying.
I'm holding that off.
I'm holding back. That's Nancy Ann now.
It's coming.
There's other improvements that in this area, on the other side of all this, that is, it's gonna help make cars go in different directions. There are people that are driving around the neighborhood to get to here that aren't gonna do that anymore, or at least as frequently, because the roads are improved down at the boulevard area. You know, Water and
Yeah,
Hanson,
yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. It hasn't been done yet, but that is gonna get done. So what I'm saying is, it's sort of creating sort of a smoothing a little bit of the existing traffic. And we have to remember that we've had a problem here for years. This isn't new. This is just the first approach that's modern compared to just slapping stop signs, taking them out, putting them back in, taking them back out. So, you know, if you look at your old Google, you'll see the old stop signs. But this is very interesting to discuss this now, because everybody sort of knows that there's a lot in the next, 8 to 10 years that's going to be taking place. So,
You've got Patty.
I certainly appreciate it. Yes, Patty, sorry.
Hi, Patty Armstrong, Richmond. I just want to make clear that mitigation that you see here is not a recommendation from the town. It's been done by our
Right.
analysis
Right.
that
Yeah.
is not using 1%. So ultimately, we took the build out and the retail and the residential. This is mitigation that we, through the analysis of Ron Mueller, have proposed to mitigate for what we're doing. So yeah, I think we
Yeah.
need to be clear that that 1% wasn't part of our assumption.
Right.
That's what they're, you folks are doing on the other intersections.
And what the planning board agreed when we gave you the permits.
Yeah, and I mean, this is mitigation you've approved. We went and vetted this, and we know that this is ample for what we're proposing at this point in time. And you'll see that going the rest of the way down Old South. From our perspective, we can do nothing but encourage, continue to look at the rest of the road, because we can stand on our heads and whistle this Dixie, but until you fix the other intersections, it's not gonna solve the problem. So, again, that's just a point I want to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
So the next intersection is at the airport roadway at Old South Road. And when we look at this intersection, this is a very, fairly heavy travel intersection. And if it's anything else, I think, a lot of the heavy movement, or majority of the heavy movement, is this right turn right here. And then there's also a heavy left turn. There's also, basically fairly heavy right turn movement right here. So in terms of the level of service, I think this intersection operating at level of service, basically E and F. So you are you're near to failing and at capacity. So as part of, again, the Richmond project for this intersection, what they are looking into is creating, a right turn pocket going into the airport. I think this would definitely help because that volume, again, whether it's in the morning or evening, it's over 200 cars. So basically, by creating this right turn pocket, you're taking out 200 cars off this through movement, and, you know, they just go right into, you know, airport. And so this is currently a four-way stop intersection. And so if it's anything else, I think all your volumes, you know, the first rule of thumb is on your major key approach, the volume has to be comparable to create a four-way stop, so you don't create an imbalance of stops and queuing that's on the approach. So I think from a safety standpoint, the four-way stop works. If it's anything else, you know, we would look into, you know, can you possibly accommodate a roundabout because of the volume? When we look at the site out there, there are a couple of physical constraints that we first noted. It's actually this right here, this section. There's this section right here. The grade is higher, you know. So if you create a roundabout, you would have to create some kind of a wall, you know, around that section. And then also, there's also this utility pole right here that has 4 transformers. So every time when you have all these transformers, if you have to relocate the pole, it's you know, it can be a challenge. So I think there are some physical constraints in terms of a roundabout, but you know, we'll certainly, you know, take a quick look at it to see if it's feasible at all. So I think those are the concepts that we will look into as part of this intersection. The last intersection, which is at you know, Old South Road and Belvedere, and if it's anything else, the heavy movement right here is this left turn and also this right turn. So this overlapping movement is you know, very high. And this roadway is fairly narrow. We measure it's only like 22 feet, and it's, you know, again, the intersection is operating at this approach right here, and as to come out, it's almost level service E, which is at capacity, you know, near failing if it's anything else. So we, you know, some of the things that we will look at is probably, is there anything that we can do, you know, to make it safer at this intersection? So that's, you know, this section of Old South Road is narrow as well, you know, like 22 feet. So this is going to be a little challenge as to, you know, as we look at, you know, what we can do to make it, you know, work better at this intersection.
I think, Ken, if I may,
Yeah.
this is one of those it works sort of forget it things in this spot.
Yeah.
We got a 30-foot layout of nobody at South Road. It's kind of a disaster.
Yeah.
That's why you see the mailboxes and everything's kind of like jammed up. There's
Yeah.
there's no layout on that road for whatever reason. That's just is what it is on Nantucket, unfortunately. But that spot there is kind of a unique. Hinsdale Road wasn't paved until about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the outlet for the big trucks. There's very few vehicles take a right onto Nobody Farm from, you know, this way.
Yeah.
It's kind of a, I don't know how to explain it except that it works pretty well there, even though it seems like it doesn't. It's not that bad. I don't want to say that it doesn't need improvement. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But it certainly doesn't need a lot of attention, in my opinion. I mean, others might have different opinions, but I kind of don't think it does. But I know you're looking at all this.
Right.
It's just this one here is kind of existing conditions is not too bad.
You're only getting traffic from two directions, kind of.
Yeah, it's only really two directions.
Yeah, the volume
Mass
shows that,
that's
you
true.
know, like, there's only like
Yeah.
70, you know, cars coming out
Yeah.
here.
It's just,
Right.
I mean, with that new laundromat thing, that's really not like a public laundromat. It's not going to
Okay.
be, you're not even going to notice it.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
So I think that includes, you know, a presentation on all the intersection. And our next step, is based on the schedule that we have, is we're gonna take all your comments and we're gonna, you know, develop, all the, you know, concepts that we talked about for all the intersections. And then we're gonna come back, in August, mid to late August, we haven't picked out a date yet, and present to you, you know, findings and, you know, get your comments, and then we'll take those comments and then we'll finalize the report. So there'll be at least, you know, at least another round of,
Yeah, one comment, let's just pretend that all these work, that the intersection at the roundabout at Fairgrounds and a roundabout here work, and everything flows more smoothly. How do we address the fact that when it rains in August or rains on a busy day in the summer, the backup comes from town, and it comes right downtown all the way past, you know, right up Old South Road, right past the Rotary. So we get everyone moving really quickly, you know, what happens then? You know, so if we have bottlenecks that are based not on this corridor necessarily,
Yeah.
but on where everyone is going,
yeah.
you know, I would not want to spend, I don't know, $30-40 million to make all of this work. If it,
You got the problem somewhere.
if the problem really,
Because you fix the problem, and
Exactly.
now you're stuck with.
and so I want to make sure that what we're doing isn't traditional traffic planning that's going to work because there's somewhere to go. We have very little roads, small roads into our main town, and should we be taking, you know, let's for argument's sake, it's going to be $60 million to do a parking garage and, you know, 8 roundabouts and everything else. Should we be thinking about it differently? Like, I'd like you guys to be thinking, should we be thinking about it differently?
Well, I think, just keep in mind, we're solving 2 problems here. One is safety, you know, which you know, is priority, and the other one is capacity, you know, like congestion or whatnot. Would be, so there are 2 problems that we're solving. Access, connectivity, and
One
all that.
important point, Ken, that you've done is you've taken all the other studies and integrated them in, which is what you were supposed to do. I already know that. I'm just making that point to all these different people that are here. This isn't just like a fresh new thing. This is your own approach to taking all the information that's been gathered. I didn't know we were going back to 2004, Mike. That's pretty far, but that's good. I didn't know. I thought it was going to the original milestone idea in 2006. But anyway, I mean, again, roundabouts work. They're all over the Cape. Forget about Europe, it never is. We're never going to have a traffic light in Nantucket. It's never going to happen. So just forget it. Don't even take 1 second to think about that. This is our traffic light, is roundabouts. And we go, as Matt is talking about, I hate when I completely agree with him like this about the traffic, but he's right. When it rains, you can't go anywhere. But that doesn't mean that we're doing anything wrong. You can't, this fact that no one goes to the beach when it rains is just the 65,000 people here, and none of them are at the beach. That isn't something that we can change with studies or solutions. You just have to live with it. It doesn't rain that much, so you just let it go. But we're about 20 years behind, and that's the sad part. If we didn't have a rotary at Milestone, what would it look like? We'd have traffic backed up in 4 different stop signs, you know what I'm saying? So, or 5, or whatever. So, we're just behind because we weren't ready for it. And now we are. There was actually a letter in the paper last summer, why isn't the town building more roundabouts? Well, it isn't that easy. Good letter, thank you very much, but it isn't that simple to do. And if it was, we'd already have. So I look forward to this future of roundabouts because it's the answer. It's just slow to get it done.
Three of us in the room that remember when it was not a rotary. Jack, myself, and Matt. That was not an airport rotary, but there was only 10,000 people or 20,000 people during the summer, and then we put that rotary on.
Year-round population in 1972 was 2,000 people.
Yeah.
2,000.
So
And now you're talking about 16,000 cars and 15,000.
17.
That's registered.
17,500 on milestone.
So,
No, she's
use
talking
that as a
about
perspective.
total.
Oh, total, I see, I
And
see.
then it goes to 50 to 60 in the summer, right?
Yeah.
We just
So,
have a lot of-
not to belabor, I'm just saying, we appreciate what you're doing, and we laugh at, we're not laughing at you. We're laughing at things that we all know that you don't know, like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, the gas station, and don't worry
Sure.
about that.
Okay.
It's all good. Nothing to do with you personally, believe me. So, Mike, is that, what are we doing next here? Just keep me going ahead in the right direction. Is this a public hearing? No, it's not a public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, it's a public meeting, and that's.
I mean, we got a lot of people here. I don't want to not take comment if there's anyone that wants to comment, because
You can open it up, it's a
We don't
public
usually
meeting, but
have
not necessarily
anyone here,
hearing, so if
you know?
anybody has anything
So
that
I'm
they've
fine
seen
with
and
that.
want to speak up,
Well, no shop is here.
Not shop is here. There
No
you go.
shop's in the room.
Oh, it's someone. They're here.
Not quite. May I just comment?
Oh, yeah, you can go up to,
Because the film, the TV thing doesn't pick it up if you speak from the audience.
Same procedure, unimportant.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's unusual for us, but yes, absolutely.
So good evening, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. I'm Ken Gendron, the chair of the North Homeowners Association, of Run Gophers. I'll compliment you and your consultants on the thoughtfulness of this approach. When I first heard of the Carter study, I wasn't quite sure what it would entail, and I really applaud you on the comprehensive nature of the approach. I'm pleased to have both the Richmond Great Point Development Plan recapitulated here, and also to see how these other things will tie into it. My concerns really are kind of at the macro level, having heard what I've heard tonight. One is, it's a 7-year look ahead, and from my thinking, it's going to take so much more than 7 years to actually build this out, that a longer look ahead might be appropriate. We've also talked about growth rates and Patty Road being already identified and we believe is confirmed that the projection rates, the growth rates projected with the RGPD project are at a higher level. That makes a lot of sense. The bulk transfer facility impact on Milestone, and I think that was in the briefway is going to be a big discontinuous uptick in heavy truck traffic through there. It doesn't adhere to a 1% growth rate. Once the storage facility in town gets relocated.
No, you won't even notice it.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Very small.
Well, except for the pit. I think the last lot was just sold from the pit.
She's talking about coffee.
Coffin's Pit. So there's a lot of commercial traffic that didn't used to come in and out of Coffin's Pit, and a lot of them are using Hinsdale because you can't get down Arrowhead or whatever that other thing is. So they're going down Hinsdale, going down Nobody Farm, and going down Milestone to get away from Old South Road.
Right.
So there's a lot more commercial traffic out there than there used to be.
It's good that I think ultimately more of that traffic may get shunted off of Old South, which makes a lot of sense to everybody. Not to belabor the point, but the study that I read about the impact of the bulk transfer, I thought said about 1,800 heavy trucks at some peak period of time, whether that's a day, would be added to the flow through Milestone.
Yes.
So that's what I said when I said.
No, can I just, and that's my thing, a little bit. The gasoline's already coming by truck.
And going after the
Yeah,
No,
Noonan.
it's just going to the gas stations, and the
Yeah,
jet
Noonan.
fuel, there's 2 trailers a day for the jet fuel, 5 days a week, in the core of the summer. Like you said, it's not quite summer, you're right about that, starting the end of this week. Fuel oil is the only additional truck traffic that's gonna add, and that's in the off-season. You won't even see it. The trucks that are on Old South now are already gonna be on Old South no matter what happens. It's Milestone that's gonna get the additional traffic
Yeah.
indirectly. So I just want you to just understand that,
Sure.
100%.
And my concern wasn't Old South Road traffic, it was rotary
Oh,
traffic.
okay.
That was the point.
Okay.
The other thing I would say from my perspective as a layman is that
Didn't it come up on the phone conversation that, and I think, Andrew, we've talked about it, when you put those medians in with the grass and stuff, that tends to calm the speed of the traffic naturally?
That's really why we are proposing that. It's that plus introducing trees and other things that put more things by the edge of the road. So you're not, I mean, it's something that was an important part of discussion during the planning process, that's why we do need trees, we do need things in there, because again, it signals you're coming into an area where you need to drive slower, and also that there's more, yes, things closer to the road, so as you're going to slow down, or normal people will slow down, as more things are closer to the edges of the road. But that's why there needs to be trees and other things to give you those cues to start. You're entering a neighborhood or an area where you need to slow down.
Thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else that wants to say anything? Chuck, you all set? You good? Okay. Mike, do you wanna?
No, just to follow up, we'll likely have another meeting again in July,
Yes,
so that there'll be another opportunity to revisit any particular issue that you think is a sticking point, and then, again, just as Ken said, we'll come back at our August meeting to present recommendations, and then we'll have, once again, another opportunity, likely in September, to see what the final product looks like. So there's plenty of opportunity this summer to comment on this whole process. And just so you know, we did, this is building off of like the Mid-Island traffic study, a lot of the data that was inputted in that. Over the last decade, there'll probably a decade from now, another traffic study done just to verify the work that we're doing this year, to see if the improvements we're making this year are correct for future. This is all good, just good planning practice and going through a cyclical process over time, every decade, just like you do with your master plan, updating that every decade. So we're just verifying the recommendations made in previous studies, and they'll do that in the future.
Thank you, and thank you guys very much.
Good job.
We appreciate it very much. Mike, do you wanna go on to the milestone audit? I know we covered it a little bit
Yeah,
in the last presentation.
we did, and we added this to the agenda in case there was any new information to discuss and present, and there's just not at this time, other than letting you know that Mass DOT is going to be contracting, haven't done it just yet, going to be contracted with GPI, Green and Peterson. They have plenty of experience here on the island. They'll
Yeah,
help
they're all over.
identify projects along Milestone Road that we can include in our 2018 tip over this next year.
How about making it wider like it was supposed to be?
We'll probably do the low-hanging fruit this upcoming round, and then, that is a recommendation for, in the future, is to widen out appropriately, at least between the Rotary and to Bunker Road, because that's your heavy freight corridor that needs to be, you need a road that actually accept that kind of truck traffic, so you don't have the edges of the road crumbling.
Well,
Exactly.
the other thing is mopeds, passing mopeds is never gonna not happen. There's no safety for them. And, yeah, the road edges, because the trucks are on the edge of the pavement, 20 to 21 feet wide. But that passing thing, like, I think I'm gonna lash myself onto that. It's like my number one thing, other than mopeds and car spaces. That is a serious problem, passing.
Dangerous.
It's just,
Well, you're absolutely right.
it isn't, no one's doing anything wrong. That's the bad part, is that the person that does this is not doing anything illegal.
They think it's
They
safe.
just don't know that they're in this little blind spot of that truck slowing down, put, and that person that's coming out of Old South, of Bunker Road, or Millview Farm, in some cases, it's not as often, is literally completely blind to that vehicle that's passing that truck. I mean, it's pretty scary.
We get a little bit of that coming out of Stop and Shop.
Wow.
We do.
There
And
shouldn't be
that's all
going that
brand
fast
new.
on Pleasant Street, but I'm just saying, and this is just something that if we're on this and the state is here, I'm just saying it's hot now,
Yeah.
we should try to get some kind of double line thing to be approved for next summer, hopefully.
They recommend it themselves through those sections. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, when you go out to Ruston, you need to go all the way out,
I-
past Ruston.
And I think they had that, yeah.
I mean, it's, trying to pull out of Russell's Lake, Mike. You gotta be going like 30 to get out of there, I mean, it's crazy.
If you come over the hill, I'm gonna hit you.
So, anyway, okay, so Mike, are we good then with that? So we can
Yes,
move
Mr.
on
Chairman.
from that?
Yes.
Or no?
From the milestone,
Yes.
from Old South Road, I think we're done with the Old South Road
Yeah.
study. As far as the milestone road safety audit, there's no new information other than whatever I
Yeah.
mentioned to you on
Right.
that item.
Okay. All right, in the 3C documents, Mike?
There's information in your packet about, as we've done in previous meetings, I'm trying to scroll to it, I'm sorry.
No, good, rather did that. Never find it, so.
You said 56? 66? Oh, geez, God, just as we've done in previous meetings, just letting you know that we're moving some funding around and that's from the 2017 UPWP. Some hours are being used in some tasks, so a little bit heavier than we used in other ones. So we're basically reducing hours in some of the implementation tasks in 4.0 and then putting them into tasks like this corridor study that we're working on now, and the tasks 3s. So the complete streets tasks, the Old South Road corridor tasks, and and some parking management. We're adding hours to those tasks and taking them from some implementation tasks that I think we're all set with, and we don't anticipate using any more hours than what the new hours are going to be. So it's just a consultation, letting you know. I don't think there's action that's needed, but just
Okay.
letting you know that I am putting that request into Mass DOT.
Okay, cool. On these, so we're gonna be tabling these, the next items, because,
Mr. Chairman, item E1, you can
We-
write for that.
oh, we can do that?
County Commissioner.
Oh, so we can, take a vote to accept that? As the next,
I'll make that motion.
Don't sound so happy.
Really?
You don't sound pleased.
I wasn't sure if that was.
Don't talk to me about cars.
Okay, okay. So, is there a second to that?
Yeah, I second.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Beautiful. And the Housing Authority and Conservation Commission will wait till the July meeting. And the at-large member is gonna be advertised. So we're gonna
Postpone that to.
postpone that, and we're gonna postpone, the election of officers to the following meeting as well. So item H, Andrew, we should probably wait on all that, of course. Yep, yep, yep. Sorry, I didn't realize that. That's it?
Yes, is ended?
So we
Joe, this is a very
people cars in our road,
Well, it's a
the
good
roads
meeting.
are strung
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I think we had mentioned there may be a need for a July meeting if July
Yes.
17th works out. Correct. We'll go ahead and hold that date and have the room reserved. Hopefully, it hasn't been reserved yet by anyone else. And then
It's up or down. Doesn't really matter.
sorry?
It doesn't matter if it's up or down, does it?
I don't know what that means up here.
When you
Upstairs,
said room
downstairs.
reserved, and there's 2 rooms technically, that's why.
Exactly. Hopefully, both rooms are available so we
Yeah.
can meet here in this building in either one of the rooms.
Okay.
And we'll include that in the ads for the at-large, to have anyone interested to attend that particular meeting on July 7th. And just to confirm, the August 21st still works for everyone for the
Yeah.
August meeting. I'm sorry?
I think.
Did you say 17th or 17th?
July
July.
17th.
Is that what we included in that?
Yes.
Okay, and what's the other date? August 21st?
What's that, is that a Monday?
The third Monday.
Okay, good.
It's probably as busy as it's going to get this year that week, so, but we'll go ahead and hold that if it works for everybody.
Okay. Yes. July 17th and August 21st. Okay, Mike, those guys did a great job, Mike.
I think so as well.
I like, I
I
think they were
like all the
good,
old
very good.
information